I was staring at the citation taped to my front door when my phone rang for the third time that morning. And I knew this was going to be one of those days that made me question why I had ever moved to Sunrise Meadows, Arizona. The fluorescent orange paper flapped in the desert breeze, declaring in bold letters that I had 72 hours to remove an illegal structure from my property or face daily fines of $500. The structure in question: my greenhouse, which happened to be a fully certified agricultural research facility registered with both the USDA and Arizona State University. I yanked the citation off the door and called the number listed at the bottom. A chirpy voice answered on the first ring. Sunrise Meadows HOA, this is Deborah speaking. How may I help you today? This is Oliver Owens on Saguaro Lane. I just found a citation on my door about my greenhouse being an illegal structure. There has to be some mistake. No mistake, Mr. Owens. The structure violates Section 12.4 of the Community Guidelines regarding accessory buildings. Mrs. Fletcher personally conducted the inspection yesterday. Of course, it was Patricia Fletcher. The woman had made it her life's mission to patrol our neighborhood like some kind of suburban sheriff since she took over as HOA president 8 months ago. I had watched her measure the height of mailbox posts with a ruler and cite people for having grass 1 inch too tall. That greenhouse is a certified research facility. I have all the permits and documentation. It's registered with the State Agriculture Department. That may be, Mr. Owens, but HOA regulations supersede personal projects. Section 12.4 clearly states that accessory structures over 200 square feet require board approval, which you never obtained. I felt my jaw clench. I bought this property specifically because the previous owner assured me all permits were in place. That greenhouse has been here for 6 years. Then it has been in violation for 6 years. Mrs. Fletcher will be available to discuss this matter at the board meeting next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Have a blessed day. She hung up before I could respond. I stood there holding my phone and the citation, feeling my blood pressure rise in a way that probably was not healthy for a 34-year-old man. The greenhouse behind my house was not just some hobby project. I had spent the last 3 years developing drought-resistant crop varieties in partnership with Arizona State University. We were on the verge of a breakthrough with a strain of tomatoes that could thrive in extreme heat with minimal water, research that could actually matter for the future of agriculture in the Southwest. I walked through my house and out the back door to look at the greenhouse. It was a professional-grade structure, 40 feet long and 20 feet wide, with climate control systems, specialized grow lights, and monitoring equipment that would make most university labs jealous. The morning sun reflected off the reinforced glass panels. Inside, I could see rows of plants at various stages of development, each one carefully labeled and documented. My phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Nina Chen, my research partner at ASU. "Did you get the data from yesterday's measurements?" I called her instead of texting back. "Nina, we have a problem. The HOA just cited the greenhouse as an illegal structure. They want it gone in 72 hours. There was a long pause. "They what?" "Oliver, we have 3 months until the grant review. If we lose the facility now, we lose everything. We have plants that took 18 months to cultivate. You cannot just move them." "I know. I am going to fight this, but I wanted you to be aware. Do you still have copies of all the facility certifications? Everything? USDA approval, state agricultural permits, the university partnership agreement, all of it. Send me whatever the HOA sent you. I will forward it to the university legal department." After I sent her photos of the citation, I spent the next 2 hours digging through my files. The paper trail was extensive. When I bought the property from the previous owner, Gerald Matthews, 3 years ago, he had provided documentation showing that the greenhouse predated current HOA regulations and was grandfathered in. He had built it back in 2019 with proper county permits. Everything had seemed legitimate. I decided to visit Gerald. He had moved to a retirement community in Scottsdale, about 30 minutes away. When I called, he sounded surprised but invited me over immediately. Gerald's new place was a modest condo with a small patio garden. He was waiting outside when I arrived, a tall man in his 70s with weathered skin and sharp eyes that suggested he was sharper than his age might imply. "Oliver, good to see you, though I take it this is not a social call based on your voice." I handed him the citation. His face darkened as he read it. "Patricia Fletcher. That woman is a menace. She tried this same nonsense when I was still there, kept sending me letters about the greenhouse. I showed her all the paperwork, told her it was grandfathered, and she backed off. Temporarily, I guess." "Do you remember what paperwork specifically convinced her?" "There was a letter from the HOA board back in 2019, signed by the president at the time, acknowledging the greenhouse and confirming it was compliant. I gave you copies of everything when you bought the house." I searched through my files on my phone while Gerald made us coffee. Sure enough, there it was, a letter dated March 2019 from then President Robert Morrison, stating that the greenhouse structure had been reviewed and approved. It was on official HOA letterhead with a seal and everything. "I found it. This should shut them down." Gerald shook his head slowly. "You would think so, but Patricia Fletcher does not operate on logic. She operates on power. When she became president, she started reinterpreting every rule to suit whatever she wanted. Old Bob Morrison, he was reasonable. Patricia is something else entirely." "What do you mean? You have not dealt with her much yet, have you? She is the type who got elected because nobody else wanted the job, and then she treated it like she was running a dictatorship. She has cited half the neighborhood for one thing or another. The Johnsons got fined for painting their door navy blue instead of approved blue. The difference, maybe half a shade. The Ramirez family got cited for parking their work van in their own driveway overnight. That is insane. That is Patricia. My advice, do not go in assuming reason will prevail. Document everything, bring a witness to any meetings, and be prepared for her to twist anything you say." I thanked Gerald and drove home, my mind racing. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. This was not just about property rights or HOA overreach. This was about research that mattered, work that could help address real problems. Those tomato plants represented years of effort, thousands of hours of careful cultivation and crossbreeding. You could not just box them up and move them to a new location. When I got home, there was another car in my driveway. A woman in her 50s stood on my porch, wearing expensive-looking athleisure wear and oversized sunglasses. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail. She turned as I approached, and I saw the clipboard in her hand. "Mr. Owens, I presume. Patricia Fletcher, HOA president." She did not offer to shake hands. "Mrs. Fletcher, I was planning to call you about this citation." "No need. I was in the neighborhood and thought I would stop by to ensure you understood the seriousness of the violation. That greenhouse is quite the eyesore, and it simply must go." "It is not an eyesore, and it is not illegal. I have documentation proving it was approved by the HOA in 2019. Her expression did not change. Previous board decisions can be revisited if they are found to have been made in error. The current board, under my leadership, has determined that the structure violates multiple guidelines: size, appearance, and the fact that you are apparently running some kind of business operation from a residential property. It is not a business. It is agricultural research in partnership with Arizona State University. Sounds like a business to me. Are you receiving any compensation, any grants or funding? The research is funded by a federal agriculture grant, yes, but that does not make it a business. It is academic research. She made a note on her clipboard. So you are receiving money for an operation being conducted from a residential property. That is definitely a violation of Section 23.1, which prohibits commercial activities. Academic research is not a commercial activity. The board will make that determination. In the meantime, the citation stands. 72 hours, Mr. Owens, or the fines begin. Good day. She walked back to her car, a pristine white Lexus SUV, and drove off before I could say anything else. I went inside and immediately called Nina again. It is worse than I thought. The HOA president just showed up at my house. She is claiming the research grant makes it a commercial activity. That is absurd. Federal research grants are not commercial activities. Every university researcher in the country would be in violation of residential zoning if that were the case. Try telling her that. Nina, I need you to get the university involved officially. If they send legal representation, maybe she will take this seriously. I am already on it. I spoke with Dr. Reeves in the agriculture department. He is appalled. The university has a lot invested in this research. He is contacting their legal team now. The next morning, I woke up to find another citation on my door. This one was for unauthorized parking because my truck was apparently 6 inches over the edge of my driveway onto my own lawn. The fine was $150. I took photos and added it to the growing file. At work, I could barely concentrate. I ran an independent consulting business from home, helping agricultural companies optimize their irrigation systems, which meant my schedule was flexible. But it also meant I needed to handle this HOA situation myself. By afternoon, I had compiled everything. The original 2019 approval letter, county building permits from when the greenhouse was constructed, USDA certification documents, the university partnership agreement, state agriculture department registration, environmental impact assessments. The greenhouse had more documentation than most small businesses. Tuesday evening came, and I arrived at the HOA board meeting 15 minutes early. The meeting was held in the community center, a bland building near the neighborhood entrance. About 20 other homeowners were already there, which surprised me. Usually these meetings drew maybe 5 people. A couple I recognized from 3 houses down, Tom and Lisa Rodriguez, waved me over. "You are the greenhouse guy," Tom said. "We heard about what Patricia is trying to pull. It is garbage, man. She is out of control." "You are here about the HOA too. We got cited for our work van," Lisa said. "It is Tom's plumbing business. We have parked that van in our driveway for 8 years. Suddenly, it is a commercial vehicle violation. She wants us to rent off-site parking." As I looked around the room, I realized almost everyone there had similar stories. A woman named Jennifer had been fined for a wreath on her door that was not in approved colors. An elderly man named Frank got cited because his roof shingles were supposedly the wrong shade of brown after he had them replaced following storm damage. Patricia Fletcher entered exactly at 7 p.m., followed by 4 other board members. She took her seat at the front table and banged a gavel like she was presiding over a court. This meeting of the Sunrise Meadows HOA board will come to order. First order of business, approval of last month's minutes. The meeting droned on through various mundane items: landscaping contracts, pool maintenance schedules, a dispute about holiday decoration timeframes. Patricia ran the meeting with iron control, cutting off anyone who tried to speak out of turn. Finally, after 40 minutes, we reached new business. "We have several violations to address," Patricia said. "First, the matter of 4782 Sagaro Lane, the Owens property. Mr. Owens, are you present?" I stood. "I am here, and I have documentation showing that the greenhouse is fully legal and approved. You will have your turn to speak." "The issue before the board is a structure that exceeds approved dimensions, was never properly permitted through HOA channels, and is being used for commercial purposes in violation of residential zoning." "That is not accurate," I said. "I have the 2019 approval letter from President Morrison right here." I held up the document. Patricia barely glanced at it. "That letter is not valid. President Morrison exceeded his authority in issuing individual approvals without full board votes. Any such letters issued during his tenure are considered void. You cannot just retroactively void official HOA documents," I said, my voice rising despite my attempt to stay calm. "The current board has full authority to correct errors made by previous administrations. Furthermore, the commercial activity aspect is clear. You are receiving funding to operate what amounts to a farm on residential property. It is a research facility, not a farm. It is registered with the USDA as an agricultural research station. I have certification documents from 3 different state and federal agencies." One of the other board members, a middle-aged man named Gregory, spoke up. "Patricia, maybe we should look at his documentation before making a final decision." Patricia shot him a look that could have frozen lava. "The citation has been issued. Per HOA bylaws, the property owner has 72 hours to comply before fines commence. That period expires Thursday at noon. If Mr. Owens wishes to appeal, he can submit a formal appeal in writing, which the board will consider at next month's meeting." "Next month? The citation says I have to remove the structure this week." "That is correct. The appeal process does not pause enforcement." "That makes no sense. How can I appeal if I am already being fined?" "Those are the procedures, Mr. Owens. Now, if there is no further business on this matter, we will move on." I looked around at the other board members. Gregory looked uncomfortable. The other 3 would not meet my eyes. Patricia had them completely cowed. "This is not over," I said. "I will be consulting with attorneys." "That is your right," Patricia said with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Next item, the Rodriguez property and the commercial vehicle violation." I sat through the rest of the meeting, watching Patricia steamroll over Tom and Lisa's perfectly reasonable arguments about their van. She shot down every objection, cited obscure regulation subsections, and ultimately upheld every single fine and violation that was on the agenda. When the meeting ended, a group of us gathered in the parking lot. There were 8 homeowners who had all been recently cited for various supposed violations. "We need to do something," Jennifer said. "She is bleeding us dry with these fines. I am up to $2,000 already because I missed the first citation notice. It blew off my door." "Can we vote her out?" someone asked. Tom shook his head. "Not until the annual election, which is not for another 9 months. And honestly, who wants to deal with running for HOA president? That is how she got the position in the first place. Nobody else wanted it." "What about a recall?" I suggested. "The bylaws require signatures from 60% of homeowners," Gregory said, walking up behind us. I was surprised to see the board member joining us. "And Patricia has already thought of that. She has been very careful to spread out her citations and violations. She hits a few people hard, but most of the neighborhood is not directly affected, so they do not care enough to sign a recall petition." "You are on the board," Lisa said. "Can't you do something?" Gregory sighed. "I have tried. But it takes a majority vote to overturn her decisions, and the other 3 board members are too scared of her. She has dirt on everyone. Bill's business partner was convicted of fraud 5 years ago. Marjorie's daughter has a drug charge from college. Patricia makes it clear she will make things difficult if anyone crosses her. That is blackmail, I said. Prove it. She never puts anything in writing. It is all implications and suggestions. I drove home that night feeling a mix of anger and helplessness. This was America in 2025, and I was being pushed around by a petty tyrant with a clipboard because nobody wanted to deal with the hassle of standing up to her. The next morning, I got a call from a lawyer at Arizona State University, a woman named Sarah Dennison. Mr. Owens, I have been briefed on your situation. The university takes this very seriously. We have significant resources invested in your research, and we cannot afford to lose the facility. I am prepared to file an injunction to prevent the HOA from taking any action until this is resolved through proper legal channels. How long will that take? Probably several months, possibly longer if they fight it. But the injunction should protect you from fines in the meantime. Several months. We have plants that need constant care and monitoring. Any disruption could ruin 18 months of work. I understand. Let me be clear with the HOA that we are prepared to pursue legal action. Often that is enough to make them back down. These neighborhood associations tend to fold when faced with actual legal consequences. That afternoon, Sarah sent a formal letter to the HOA, copied to me and Nina. It was beautifully written, laying out exactly why their actions were groundless, citing multiple legal precedents, and making it clear that ASU would vigorously defend the research facility. She also requested an immediate meeting with the board to resolve the matter. Patricia's response came the next morning. It was brief. The board had considered the university's letter and determined that it did not change their position. The greenhouse remained in violation. The 72-hour deadline was now at 48 hours. She is not backing down, I told Sarah on the phone. Then we file the injunction. I will have it ready by this afternoon. We will go to court first thing tomorrow morning. But when Sarah tried to file the injunction that afternoon, she hit a snag. The HOA's bylaws included a mandatory arbitration clause that required all disputes to go through arbitration before any court action could be filed. The court clerk refused to accept the injunction filing until arbitration had been attempted. This could take weeks, Sarah said, frustration clear in her voice. We have to notify the HOA of our intent to arbitrate. They have 10 days to respond. Then we have to select an arbitrator, which can take another 2 weeks. It is a stalling tactic. Meanwhile, they start fining me $500 a day. Unfortunately, yes. But keep documentation of everything. When we finally get before an arbitrator or judge, we will seek reimbursement for all fines plus our legal costs. I hung up and stared at my greenhouse. The afternoon sun made the glass panels glow. Inside, tomato plants heavy with fruit stood in neat rows. Nina and I were scheduled to harvest samples next week for testing. Some of these plants were genetic combinations that might never be replicated if we lost them. Thursday at noon, the deadline passed. By Friday morning, I had a new notice on my door. Daily fines of $500 were now in effect, accruing until the violation was resolved. I was also informed that if the fines reached $10,000, the HOA had the right to place a lien on my property. I took the notice down and added it to my file, which was now several inches thick. Nina came by that afternoon to check on the plants. She looked stressed, dark circles under her eyes. The grant committee is asking questions, she said as we stood in the greenhouse. They want to know if the research is at risk. If we cannot guarantee the security of the facility, we might lose funding. We are not losing the facility. The arbitration will resolve this. Oliver, arbitration could take months. The grant review is in 10 weeks. If we cannot show progress, if we cannot demonstrate stable research conditions, they will give the money to someone else. I did not have an answer for that. We worked in silence for a while, taking measurements and samples, recording data. The plants did not care about HOA disputes or bureaucratic deadlines. They just kept growing, kept adapting to the specialized conditions we had created. As Nina was packing up to leave, my doorbell rang. I answered to find a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and graying hair. She held a folder. Mr. Owens. My name is Rebecca Sanderson. I am a reporter with the Arizona Republic. I have been investigating HOA overreach in Arizona communities, and I heard about your situation. Would you be willing to talk to me? I looked at Nina, who nodded. Maybe public pressure will help. I invited Rebecca inside and told her everything. She took notes, asked thoughtful questions, and seemed genuinely outraged on my behalf. This is exactly the kind of story I have been tracking, she said. HOAs in Arizona have tremendous power but very little oversight. The laws governing them have not kept pace with how they have evolved. Can I see the greenhouse? I gave her a tour, explaining the research, showing her the certification documents, the university partnership agreement. She took photos of everything. This is significant research, she said, and she wants you to tear it down because it is not the right shade of beige. She claims it is about size and commercial use, but honestly, I think she just does not like that I have not fallen in line. She wants everyone scared of her. You mind if I try to contact Mrs. Fletcher for comment? Be my guest. Rebecca's article appeared online that Sunday and in print on Monday. It was front-page news in the local section. The headline read, HOA targets agricultural research, threatens food security project. The article was thorough and fair, presenting both sides but making it clear that the HOA's position was absurd. It included photos of the greenhouse, quotes from Nina and Dr. Reeves at ASU, and detailed the importance of drought-resistant crop research for Arizona's future. Patricia Fletcher's quoted response was brief. The HOA has a responsibility to maintain property values and enforce community standards. All residents must follow the same rules. The article went viral locally. By Monday afternoon, my phone was ringing constantly with calls from neighbors offering support, other reporters requesting interviews, and even a state legislator's office asking for information about HOA reform. Tuesday morning, I woke up to find my greenhouse surrounded by yellow caution tape. A notice taped to the door declared the structure a hazardous violation and stated that HOA hired contractors would begin demolition on Friday if I had not already removed it. I called Sarah immediately. They are threatening to tear it down themselves. They cannot do that. That would be trespassing and destruction of property. Call the police and file a report. I want this documented. I called the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office and explained the situation. A deputy arrived an hour later, a young guy named Martinez who seemed confused by the whole thing. So the HOA wants to tear down your greenhouse, but it is legal. It is legal according to county permits, state agriculture department, USDA, and the university. The HOA claims it violates their rules, but I have documentation showing it was approved. He looked at the greenhouse, then at his notepad. I cannot really enforce HOA rules. That is a civil matter. But if they come onto your property and start tearing stuff down without a court order, that would be criminal trespass and vandalism. If that happens, call us immediately. He filed a report and left. It was not much, but at least it was documented. Wednesday brought more developments. The Arizona State Legislature's Urban Affairs Committee announced they were opening an investigation into HOA practices in Arizona. Patricia Fletcher had been invited to testify. So had I. Thursday afternoon, I was working in the greenhouse when I heard voices in my front yard. I walked around to find Patricia Fletcher standing on my lawn with two men in work clothes and a small excavator on a trailer. "What are you doing?" "The deadline for voluntary removal has passed, Mr. Owens. Per HOA authority granted in the CC and Articus you signed when you purchased the property, we are authorized to remove violations at owner expense when compliance is not met. You are not touching my greenhouse. We have every right. You signed the agreement when you bought the house. I am calling the police." I pulled out my phone, but Patricia just smiled. "Call them. They will tell you this is a civil matter." I called 911 anyway. While I waited, more neighbors started gathering. Tom and Lisa came out of their house. Jennifer walked over from across the street. Within 10 minutes, a dozen people were standing in my yard. Deputy Martinez arrived, looking less confused and more annoyed this time. "Mrs. Fletcher, we talked about this. You cannot just demolish someone's property. We have authorization through the CC and Articus. This is HOA business." "No, this is trespassing. Sir, do you want to press charges?" "Absolutely," I said. Patricia's confident expression finally cracked slightly. "You cannot arrest me for enforcing HOA rules. I can arrest you for trespassing and attempted destruction of property," Martinez said. "Madam, you need to leave this property now and take your contractors with you. This is outrageous. I am the HOA president. I have authority here." "You have authority to levy fines and take people to court. You do not have authority to come onto private property and start tearing things down without a court order. That is the law." Patricia pulled out her phone. "I am calling my attorney. You do that. In the meantime, leave the property." The contractors, looking uncomfortable with the whole situation, started loading their equipment back onto the trailer. Patricia stood there arguing with someone on her phone for several minutes before finally storming off to her car. After she left, Martinez turned to me. "You should probably file for a restraining order and seriously consider that lawsuit your university lawyer mentioned." That night, Sarah Dennison called. "I saw the police report. This is good, actually. It shows a pattern of harassment and overreach. We can use this. I am filing an emergency injunction tomorrow morning, and I am also recommending we pursue criminal harassment charges." "Can we do that?" "We can try. She threatened to destroy property. That is more than just civil HOA nonsense. Let me work on it." Friday morning, I was scheduled to testify before the state legislature's committee. The hearing was in Phoenix, at the Capitol building. Nina came with me, along with Dr. Reeves from ASU. The committee room was smaller than I expected, with about 15 legislators seated in a semicircle. There were maybe 30 people in the gallery, including several reporters I recognized. Patricia Fletcher was already there, sitting with a lawyer. She would not look at me. The committee chair, Representative Douglas Martinez, called the hearing to order. "We are here today to examine concerns about HOA practices in Arizona and whether current laws provide adequate protections for homeowners. We have several witnesses today. We will start with Mrs. Fletcher, president of the Sunrise Meadows HOA." Patricia took the seat at the witness table, looking composed and professional. Her lawyer sat beside her. "Mrs. Fletcher, thank you for coming. Can you explain your position regarding the Owens property?" "Certainly. The Sunrise Meadows HOA has a responsibility to all residents to maintain property values and community standards. Mr. Owens has constructed an oversized accessory structure without proper HOA approval. We have attempted to work with him to resolve this, but he has been uncooperative. The structure violates multiple community guidelines regarding size, appearance, and use. You are aware the structure is a certified agricultural research facility. I am aware Mr. Owens claims it is for research. However, he is receiving financial compensation through grants, which makes it a commercial operation. Our community is zoned residential, not commercial. Representative Martinez frowned. Academic research grants are standard practice. That does not make something a commercial operation. The HOA board determined otherwise. We have the authority to interpret our own guidelines. Another legislator, Representative Karen Walsh, spoke up. Mrs. Fletcher, what would it cost the community if this research facility were actually removed? You are aware ASU has invested significant resources. With respect, Representative, the value to the university does not supersede our community rules. If we make exceptions for one person, everyone will want exceptions. But the structure was approved in 2019 by your predecessor. That approval was improperly granted. The current board has corrected that error. I could see several legislators exchanging looks. Patricia was not helping her case. After Patricia finished, it was my turn. I brought all my documentation, spread it out on the table, and methodically walked through everything. The original permits from 2019, the HOA approval letter, the USDA certification, the university partnership, the importance of the research. This is not about me wanting special treatment, I said. This is about a legitimate scientific facility that is properly permitted, properly operated, and contributing to research that could help Arizona farmers deal with drought and climate change. The HOA is trying to destroy this because it does not fit their aesthetic preferences. Representative Martinez asked, has the HOA explained why they believe they can retroactively void the 2019 approval? They claim the former president exceeded his authority. But the letter is on official HOA letterhead, properly signed and sealed. If HOA boards can just arbitrarily void previous decisions, then nothing is ever really settled. Any approval can be undone whenever new board members feel like it. Dr. Reeves testified next, explaining the research in detail and the potential consequences of losing the facility. Nina presented data showing the progress we had made and the timeline we were working under. By the end of the hearing, which lasted nearly 3 hours, I felt cautiously optimistic. Several legislators had asked pointed questions about HOA accountability and oversight. Representative Martinez announced that the committee would be drafting new legislation to reform HOA practices in Arizona. But legislation would take months or years. I needed a solution now. That afternoon, Sarah Dennison got her injunction. A judge issued an emergency order prohibiting the HOA from taking any action regarding my greenhouse until the arbitration process was complete. The judge also ordered that all fines were suspended pending resolution. Patricia Fletcher's response came by email that evening. She was requesting an emergency HOA meeting to discuss expanding enforcement powers and addressing external interference in HOA operations. She is not giving up, I told Nina on the phone that night. Neither are we. Oliver, we got some good news. The grant committee saw the news coverage and the legislative hearing. They are impressed with how the university is standing up for the research. They want to do a site visit next month. That is great, but what if we are still dealing with this HOA nightmare? Then we document it as part of the research challenges. Environmental issues, regulatory hurdles, bureaucratic interference, it is all part of academic research. We just need to keep the facility operational. The following week, things escalated further. Patricia Fletcher and the HOA board filed a counter-suit against me, a sue, and even Deputy Martinez for conspiracy to undermine legitimate HOA authority. The lawsuit was clearly frivolous, but it was one more thing to deal with. More reporters picked up the story. I did interviews with local TV stations, radio shows, even a national agricultural podcast. Public opinion was overwhelmingly on my side, but Patricia seemed to view the attention as validation of her importance. The real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Gregory, the board member who had shown some sympathy, reached out to me privately. We met at a coffee shop in Scottsdale, away from the neighborhood. "I have been on the board for 6 years," he told me. "I have watched Patricia become more and more extreme. But what happened at your house last week, showing up with contractors to tear down your greenhouse, that crossed a line? I appreciate your support, but unless you can get the other board members to vote against her, I do not know what you can do. I have been documenting everything for the past 8 months. Every time she threatened someone, every backroom deal, every time she twisted the rules. I have emails, recordings of board meetings, financial records showing how she has been using HOA funds for personal expenses." I sat up straighter. Personal expenses. She has been billing the HOA for meals, gas, even a vacation she claimed was for an HOA conference that did not exist. We are talking about $20,000 over 8 months. That is embezzlement. That is exactly what it is. I have been waiting for the right moment to bring it forward. With everything that is happening now with the legislative attention, I think it is time. But I need to know you will back me up. The other board members will deny everything. It will be messy. Of course I will back you up. Can you go to the police with this? I already have an appointment with a detective tomorrow morning. I wanted to give you a heads up first. That night, I barely slept. The idea that Patricia had been embezzling from the HOA on top of everything else was almost too perfect. But it also meant this was going to get much uglier before it got better. Gregory called me 2 days later. The detective took everything. They are opening an investigation. It is going to take a few weeks for them to go through the financial records, but he seemed confident there is a case. What about the other board members? They are lawyering up. Bill and Marjorie are claiming they did not know about the financial irregularities. That is probably true, honestly. Patricia controlled all the books. They are trying to distance themselves from her now that they see how serious this is. The HOA emergency meeting that Patricia had called for the following Tuesday suddenly became about something very different. When I arrived, the parking lot was packed. It seemed like half the neighborhood had shown up. Inside, Patricia sat at the head table looking pale but defiant. Gregory and the other board members were conspicuously sitting in the audience instead of at the board table. A man in a suit I did not recognize called the meeting to order. For those who do not know me, I am Arthur Chen, attorney for the Sunrise Meadows HOA board. Given recent developments, I have been asked to facilitate this meeting. First order of business, Mrs. Fletcher. The board has requested your immediate resignation as president, effective tonight. Patricia stood up. This is a witch hunt. I have done nothing wrong. Every action I have taken has been for the good of this community. Mrs. Fletcher, you are under investigation for embezzlement. The board has reviewed the financial records Mr. Gregory provided. There are significant irregularities that need to be explained. Those records are being misinterpreted. I can explain every expense. Then you will have the opportunity to do so with the authorities. In the meantime, the board has voted 3-1 to remove you as president. The one dissenting vote was yours, which you cast by email earlier today, but you do not have veto power over a removal vote. Patricia looked around the room at the faces of neighbors she had terrorized for months. Nobody was sympathetic. You are all going to regret this. Every one of you. I will sue this HOA. I will sue the board members individually. I will sue Mr. Owens and his precious greenhouse. You have not heard the last of me. She grabbed her bag and stormed out. The room erupted in conversation. Arthur held up his hands. Please, let's maintain order. Second order of business. Regarding the various citations and violations that have been issued over the past several months, the board is conducting a comprehensive review. Any citation issued without full board vote will be suspended pending review. That includes the Owens greenhouse matter. I felt relief wash over me. It was not over yet, but this was real progress. The board apologizes for how this situation has been handled. We allowed one person to consolidate too much power and act without proper oversight. That ends now. The meeting continued for another hour, with various homeowners standing up to share their experiences with Patricia's enforcement reign. It was cathartic for people to finally speak freely without fear of retaliation. After the meeting, Tom Rodriguez came up to me. Man, your greenhouse might have saved the whole neighborhood. If you had not fought back so hard, if ASU had not gotten involved, if those reporters had not picked up the story, Patricia would still be running things. I just wanted to do my research. I did not sign up to be a revolutionary. Sometimes you do not get to choose your battles. They choose you. Over the next few weeks, things slowly returned to normal. The board formally voted to uphold the 2019 approval of my greenhouse. All fines were rescinded. They even sent a formal letter of apology, which was signed by all 4 remaining board members. Patricia Fletcher was arrested 3 weeks later. The detectives' investigation had uncovered not just the HOA embezzlement, but also evidence that she had been running similar schemes with 2 other organizations she was involved with. In total, she had stolen nearly $70,000. Her arrest made the news, and suddenly, my greenhouse story was back in the headlines. Rebecca from the Arizona Republic wrote a follow-up piece titled, "How an Agricultural Researcher Exposed HOA Corruption." The criminal case moved faster than I expected. Patricia's lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the prosecutor was not interested. There were too many victims, too many instances of abuse of power. The case went to trial 4 months later. I was called to testify, along with Gregory, Tom, Lisa, Jennifer, and about a dozen other homeowners. The prosecution painted a picture of someone who systematically abused her position, targeting anyone she perceived as a threat, and stealing money to fund a lifestyle she could not otherwise afford. The jury deliberated for less than 6 hours. Guilty on all counts: embezzlement, fraud, theft. The judge sentenced her to 4 years in prison and ordered full restitution to all victims. Standing outside the courthouse after the sentencing, I was surrounded by reporters asking how I felt. I am glad it is over. But honestly, this was never really about Patricia Fletcher personally. It was about a system that gave one person too much power with too little oversight. The HOA reforms the legislature is working on, that is what really matters, making sure this cannot happen to someone else. The Arizona legislature passed the HOA Reform Act 6 months after Patricia's sentencing. It included provisions requiring financial transparency, limiting individual authority of board members, protecting homeowners' rights to appeal violations, and creating a state oversight board for HOA complaints. Representative Martinez cited my case specifically during the floor debate. At our greenhouse, research continued without further interruption. Nina and I successfully completed the drought-resistant tomato project. Our results were published in the Journal of Agricultural Science, and we received a second round of funding to expand the research to other crops. Dr. Reeves from ASU came out for the publication celebration, which we held right there in the greenhouse. About 30 people crammed in among the plants, drinking champagne and eating tomatoes fresh off the vine. "You know, Dr. Reeves said, raising his glass, "when we partnered with Oliver 3 years ago, we thought the biggest challenge would be the science. Turns out the bureaucracy was harder than the biology." Everyone laughed. Nina clinked her glass against mine. "To bureaucracy and to beating it." "To research," I countered, "and to structures that are definitely not illegal." The Sunrise Meadows HOA elected a new president, a retired teacher named Margaret who ran on a platform of common sense and community cooperation. One of her first acts was creating a community garden next to the neighborhood pool, using some of the seeds from our research tomatoes. A year after Patricia's sentencing, I was in the greenhouse taking measurements when my phone rang. It was Gerald, the previous owner of my property. "Oliver, I heard about everything that happened. I am so sorry I did not warn you more seriously about Patricia. It worked out. Actually, I wanted to thank you. If you had not built this greenhouse, if you had not documented everything so carefully, I never would have had the evidence to fight back." "I built it to grow orchids," Gerald said with a laugh. "Never imagined it would become a federal research facility and the center of a criminal investigation. Though I am glad it did. Someone needed to stop that woman. The whole thing still feels surreal sometimes. I just wanted to do research. But you did more than research. You stood up for what was right. That matters." After we hung up, I walked through the greenhouse, checking on the latest batch of experimental plants. These were peppers, genetically selected to thrive in extreme heat. Early results were promising. Through the glass panels, I could see my backyard, the Arizona desert stretching beyond, the mountains in the distance. This was why I did this work. Not to fight HOAs or expose corruption, but to help solve real problems. To find ways for people to grow food in harsh conditions. To make a small difference in a big challenge. The HOA nonsense had been a detour, an unwelcome distraction. But in fighting it, I had learned something important. Sometimes the obstacles are not scientific or technical. Sometimes they are just people, scared or power-hungry or both, trying to control things they do not understand. And sometimes, you just have to stand your ground, document everything, and trust that truth and reason will eventually win out. It might take time, it might take effort, but it is worth it. My phone buzzed with a text from Nina. "Data from yesterday's harvest looks incredible. This pepper strain might be even better than the tomatoes. We should talk about grant applications." I smiled and typed back, "Let's do it." But this time, I am making sure any new structures are pre-approved by everyone from the HOA to the governor. She sent back a laughing emoji. I spent the rest of the afternoon in the greenhouse, surrounded by plants that represented years of work and the promise of future discoveries. The glass structure that Patricia Fletcher had called an illegal eyesore was now recognized as one of the leading agricultural research facilities for arid climate crops in the Southwest. Sometimes I still thought about that first citation taped to my door, the fluorescent orange paper declaring my life's work an illegal structure. It seemed like a lifetime ago, though it had only been 18 months. The greenhouse stood exactly as it had before, same size, same location, same purpose. Nothing about the structure had changed, but everything around it had transformed. An HOA president was in prison. State laws had been reformed. Dozens of homeowners had been freed from arbitrary enforcement. And research that could help feed people in increasingly challenging climates was continuing without interference. All because I refused to let someone with a clipboard and a power trip tear down something that mattered. As the sun set over the Arizona desert, casting long shadows across the rows of experimental crops, I locked up the greenhouse for the night. Tomorrow would bring new measurements, new data, new challenges. But those would be the right kind of challenges, the ones worth solving. The HOA drama was over. The research continued. And somewhere in those plants, in the careful selection and crossbreeding of genetics adapted to thrive where others could not, were answers to questions that actually mattered. That was worth fighting for. That would always be worth fighting for.